Well, thank you. I'm Brooke Baldwin, top of the hour. Great to be with you on this Friday. So, the president has offered his answer today, not only to us Americans, but to people all around the world who have rightly come to fear that the U.S. government knows way too much about us and can learn even more if it wants to, though he didn't quite say it. The president's hand was forced, of course, by the shocking revelations of Edward Snowden, the fugitive now in Russia, who, frankly, spilled the beans on the government, among other things, revealing that when you make a phone call, chances are very, very good it goes straight into the records of the super secret National Security Agency. So, big moment this morning over at the Justice Department. The president there laying out changes designed to ensure that mass surveillance only gets used against the bad guys, the terrorists and the like, not against us. The president also signaled that he personally shares our worries that, yes, he says he gets it.
I would not be where I am today were it not for the courage of dissidents like Dr. King, who were spied upon by their own government. And as president, a president who looks at intelligence every morning, I also can't help but be reminded that America must be vigilant in the face of threats.
Okay, so let's run through this together. This is a quick look at what the president says he wants to do. Number one, he says if the government wants to check the records it collects, it's going to have to ask that secret intelligence court, which the president wants to bolster with a privacy advocate. He also wants to move those records out of the government's hands while making sure they're still accessible to U.S. law enforcement. And this last one here, huge deal. He said he wants to extend privacy rights enjoyed by U.S. citizens to everyone around the globe, especially heads of state, who are, frankly, easy pickings for U.S. surveillance systems and are none too thrilled about that. Angela Merkel, her cell phone, for example. David Sirota with me now, and Ben Ferguson as well. David Sirota, syndicated columnist and radio host, and Ben Ferguson, CNN political commentator. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Afternoon.
Thank you.
David Sirota, to you first. Listening to the president today, are you satisfied with what the president laid out in terms of cherishing our privacy rights?
Well, I think it's a good thing that the president is actually speaking about this, and I think a lot of the rhetoric that he put out there is important, and it's important for people to hear that these are real concerns about privacy and about civil liberties, and I think we have Edward Snowden, the whistleblower, to thank for that. I mean, the thing that was missing, among other things, I think there were a lot of things
you've been very critical of this. I was curious if you feel better.
Well, I mean, look, I think there needs to be an acknowledgement, first and foremost, that we're having the debate that the president says is valuable because of the whistleblower, Edward Snowden, who brought out the information that's prompted the debate. So there was no discussion of what happens to Edward Snowden. There was also, on a policy level, I was troubled by the fact that while the president is saying some nice rhetoric, there is going to be no end to metadata collection, no end to mass surveillance. There are going to be some more protections. That's definitely a good thing. But the fundamental structure of the mass spying system still is preserved.
Ben Ferguson, if I heard the president right today, he was also saying, you know, listen, I'm not necessarily the bad guy here. He says that I'm not the threat, that the threat comes from terrorists. I hear you laugh. Hang on. From terrorists like you know, guys like Edward Snowden, who do spill state secrets. Snowden has not reacted himself. He is still, as we mentioned, you know, hiding out in Russia. But we did get this. Let me play this. This is a reaction we got from like-minded Julian Assange of WikiLeaks.
It's clear that the president would not be speaking today were it not for the actions of Edward Snowden and whistleblowers before him like Frank Drake and Binney. Those national security whistleblowers have forced this debate. This president has been dragged, kicking and screaming, to today's address. He has been very reluctant to make any concrete reforms, and unfortunately today we also see very few concrete reforms. What we see is kicking off the ball into the congressional grass, kicking it off into panels of lawyers that he will that he will instruct to report back at some stage in the future.
I don't know about the president kicking and screaming to do this today, Ben Ferguson, but I think it is pretty clear when you talk to a lot of people that perhaps he would not be talking today and addressing these changes had it not been for Edward Snowden, no?
Well, and he didn't want to have this discussion at all. I mean, if you look at not only when he was elected, but also when he was reelected, he attacked these policies. He said these policies were un-American. He said these policies of spying on Americans had gone too far. And then the Bush rogue administration was these extremists that didn't care about the Constitution. And now the same policies that he attacked, not only is he using them, he's actually bolstered them and expanded them. So he didn't want to be there today. But I actually feel bad a little bit for the president.
Are
sure,
you agreeing
because
with
I
Julian
actually
Assange?
feel bad for him. I mean, he walked out there and said these are awful, and then he became president. And he saw real threats, and he said, "Holy cow! We not only do we need these things, we need to make them bigger." The problem is his own party doesn't like this, so he's stuck in this tough situation. So today, what did he really say? He didn't really change that much. The court is going to review this every, several months here. When was the last time they ever said no? I mean, can you find that? Because they don't say no very often.
We're going to talk
the
to Jeff
intelligence
Toobin about the
community.
FISA court. I know he's had some strong words about this court in the past, and we're talking watchdogs, but I know there are questions about who watches the watchdog, who's this advocate. But here's my other question, because I don't know if this is to allay concerns among Americans, but also to the point the president made, saying essentially let's extend privacy rights to people around the globe, so they shouldn't be worried that the U.S. will be snooping on them. David Sirota, do you think that quells their worries? I.e. the Angela Merkels of the world as well, leaders, our friends?
No, I don't think it probably quells their worries at all. I mean, I think that it's good that the United States is having that discussion and that the head of the United States government is making that kind of statement. I don't think it reassures them. And I want to go back to a point that Ben made about safety. I mean, let's have an honest discussion about safety, and that's what the president hasn't had yet. There was a lot of talk about national security, but what we know is that senators who have evaluated classified information, that the New America Foundation put out a study of 225 terrorism cases. There has been story after story after story where there is no evidence that the programs that were disclosed by Snowden have stopped any terrorist
But was
attacks.
today not the right step, at least for the administration? Hang on. Wasn't today the right step for the administration? This is a super secret program, and this was a very public way for the president to address this. David Sirota.
Well, I certainly think it's good that the President of the United States is saying the rhetoric that he is putting out there.
I hear this
the
word rhetoric you keep using.
Right, it's rhetoric. It's not necessarily a policy change. I mean, the question really is, and I think it's being answered right now, is the President putting out nice rhetoric that sounds like civil liberties protections in order to essentially cement and solidify the national security apparatus and mass spying?
Go ahead, Ben, hop in.
Here's the issue. If we actually have successes with this data, you don't get to go out there and celebrate the successes because, one, it was a secret program, and two, if you do actually have a success in thwarting an attack, you don't also have the luxury of going out there and letting the bad guys know not only do you know that and you thwarted it, but also you're following them because of the data you use. So it's a very unrealistic expectation for anyone to imply that the president should be able to come out there and show us
NSA reform panel. The president's own NSA reform panel, which had access to all of that information, they said there is no evidence whatsoever to say that the programs that were disclosed have thwarted terrorism or will thwart terrorism.
David, final word, Ben Ferguson. Gotta go.
Do you actually, hold on, you can't be naive enough to think that every piece of information that they are using that is supposed to be top secret, when it is successful, they're going to come out and grandstand on it. That's not how the intelligence community has ever worked, nor should it work that way. And so the President of the United States of America is in a tough spot here. He wants to act like he's against these programs, but he understands how vitally important they are. And this whole idea that he says, well, we're not going to spy on leaders. I hope we spy on leaders if we think they're doing something that's shady. And to say out there, we're no longer going to do this, well, what if there is a leader that, in fact, we do need information on? From America's interests, we should be looking for that information because they're spying on us. And all these other leaders, their countries, are spying on America, too. That's how the game works.
Okay, as journalists, we will not leave it there. We're not finished with this. David Sirota and Ben Ferguson, for now, thank you.